Today on What It's Like, discussion episode, we are going to talk about car modifications that make purists cringe. This is a list of modifications that owners think that they are improving their car, but in many ways they are making their car worse. And I'm going to start this list with a very controversial one, and I'm a bit of a hypocrite for this myself, and that is engine swap. Because it's a double standard, and for me, and it really depends on the vehicle and the circumstances. For those that don't know, I own a 52 Chevy 1-ton truck that has a 350 V8 in it. With that said, the 350 V8 isn't dressed up at all. It actually looks like it spent its life at the bottom of a lake. And to be fair, when I bought the truck, it had a 327 V8 in it. So it was already set up to take a V8. The 327 started knocking. A really good friend of mine put a 350 V8 inside, and that's what I mean. Like, I use my truck, but if you're going to a car show and you see a two-door Packard with a 350 V8 in it, it kind of breaks your heart because the guy only drives it to the car show and that's it. He just put it in there for convenience. The engine thing is very low on my list because, like I said, I'd rather see these cars on the road, and if you use them, it doesn't bother me that much. What really bothers me is when I got to inside the car. This is on the same car, mind you. The Packard, when looking inside, had the piece of resistance. Was the steering wheel column was replaced with that hideous mid-80s GM column. Why? Why do people do that? For one, the column is ugly. Two, power steering is overrated. If the wheel gets hard to turn, and you have manual steering, it probably needs grease. Take it to a mechanic who can find the Zerk, give it some. I'm sure the manual steering will start to work good. Plus, it builds up arm muscles, and it's part of the driving experience. I never got why people want to put power steering in these cars. Because one, there's more to go wrong. I had power steering problems on my 67 Mustang to the point where I just said, screw it, I'm just going to put a manual box in. And that's what I did because, one, it was too easy to turn the steering wheel, and it was very vague. It felt very numb. After I put manual steering, I converted power steering to manual steering. And after I did that, the car was a whole lot better to drive. There is far less to go wrong on a manual steering setup. If you go from manual steering to power steering, odds are you have to change the front end. A lot of people go with the Mustang 2 front end so that they could put power disc brakes on the front. I don't have a problem with power brake upgrade. I think that that's a better upgrade than a power steering upgrade so you have to change the front end. You have to buy all of the plumbing work to go from the master cylinder for the power steering pump to the rack itself. It gets expensive. A lot of people don't realize it takes a lot of money. Some people have a lot of it. A lot of people don't have any of it. If you have no money, just grease the rack. I assure you, it's really not that bad. I got to work at a classic car dealership over the summer, so I got to drive a lot of cars that had aftermarket power steering columns in them. I probably drove no less than 10 that had the same power steering column with the tilt wheel feature. It's a chrome column that has tilt at the top. It is a piece of shit. Do not buy that column. Every single one that I've ever drove has a dead spot towards the center. So you're going to spend thousands of dollars getting this thing installed. It doesn't save you any space, even with the tilt wheel. I drove one in a Model A truck, and it was really bad. Like, there was no room in this truck. I actually took a video of how much space there was in the truck. I'm going to put it right here if I still have it. But just check out this. So now it looks like there's more space in here, but this steering wheel column takes up a lot of space. I'm going to try to get in. Getting in this thing is really hard. You have to go head first, much like a Corvette, kind of dance around the steering wheel. But when you're driving this thing, it's almost like you're driving a Volkswagen bus because you're just sitting on top of the steering wheel. Just leave the original steering wheels in here. I don't understand why people get rid of them. Definitely not saving you any space, that is for sure. Versus how much space is in there with the big wheel. The big wheel is huge, don't get me wrong, but it does not take up as much space as that small wheel just because the column takes up more room than the steering wheel itself. And there's no room in there, and it just blows my mind why people spend thousands of dollars on this upgrade and it sucks. It's not worth it. Save your money. One more point about the power steering rack and we're going to move on. So I think a lot of people's thought process is that if they update or upgrade the power steering rack, that their car will not wander all over the road. And let me tell you, that is not true. Your car will still wander because of bushings, because of tie rod ends, because of wear in the front. You have to change all the bushings and stuff if you don't want your car to wander all over the road. It doesn't really have as much to do with the steering box as it does all of those other components. Yes, the steering box could be worn out. I would just keep it stock, personally. I've never had an issue with a steering box, a stock steering box, but all of the aftermarket ones, like I said, they all have a dead spot towards the center. And it's so weird whenever you're trying to steer it and you can feel it want to steer, but it's a dead spot. And every single one that I drove had it. So just to reiterate, I think that in mid-80s GMC or Chevy column in a classic car or one of those chrome aftermarket tilt units just looks stupid and tacky, but that's my personal opinion. What do you guys think in the comment section below? Moving on. So Rally, Krager SS, or American Racing wheels, they look good on, say, a 67 Mustang or a GTO or any muscle car from the 60s. They do not look good on a 30s, 40s, or 50s car. I am just saying. I get why people do it. They do it to put the radial tires on, but they make steelies. Just an opinion. Okay, next up, hot rods of original cars. Hot rod is probably the stupidest concept ever conjured up in my opinion. We are going to take a running and driving car. We are going to cut the roof off and make a custom 2 to 4 inch windshield. Don't worry though, we're going to tub it out so that we can fit inside. Now that we got all that done, there's still one problem. We can still see out the windshield, so we're going to add the biggest blower possible. And let's not forget the biggest cam that we could possibly fit in this engine so that it can shake itself to pieces every stoplight at every intersection. Not being able to see anywhere you go in a rocket ship. It makes total sense, doesn't it? I got to drive a bunch of hot rods last summer. I honestly think it's the stupidest concept ever invented. Backing up is a total nightmare. Why people like to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on these gigantic money pits is beyond me. If you're into this kind of cool. I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I just ask why. If you want to know what it's like to drive a hot rod, if you have a bathroom that has no windows, lock yourself in your bathroom, put a blindfold on, and put some V8 engine revving noise. That is what it's like. You can't see nothing out of those cars. They make no sense whatsoever. Why would you take a good running car and Frankenstein it? But on the flip side, I think resto mods, if they're done in good taste, are okay. For those unfamiliar with the term resto mod, what does that mean? It's basically taking the shell or the body of an original car, but you're not chopping it, you're not tubbing it. So if you wanted to go back to original, it wouldn't be that difficult. And just putting a different drivetrain in, different engine, different transmission, different drive line to make it more roadable on today's roads. And I honestly don't see a problem with that. Some purists absolutely cringe at the idea of a resto mod. And it kind of goes back to the first point. It depends on what it is and what it's used for, which is a double standard, I know, but that's just the way it is. I mean, like, if you saw a Duesenberg with a 350 V8, that's very cringeworthy. But if you saw a 52 Chevy with a 350 V8, that's okay. And everybody's different. All right, on to airbags. I know some cars look great slammed, but they put them on lowering springs. And for the record, I hate lifted vehicles as well. I drove a lifted truck this year, and it was one of the worst experiences I ever had. All of the wheels kind of sort of want to do their own thing and go their own way. I rode in a truck with airbags, and when we stopped, it felt like we were just swaying. It almost had the feeling of being on a boat. Why would you want to drive a car that feels like you're on the water? They have boats for that. And it did not have the same feeling as, like, say, a land yacht, like a 1977 Lincoln Mark V, for example. Those cars feel amazing driving down the road. This felt very unnatural. Like, you could feel the body swaying every which way as you drove down the road. I mean, if you're into the whole jack-in-the-box kind of ride, go for it. I'm not. I like my car stable. All right, and that leads us to the last one, aftermarket custom digital gauges. It takes away from the original charm of the car. And I'm not talking about getting the ones for, say, oil pressure, coolant temperature, the amp meter in the center and mounting it there. I don't have a problem with those. What I'm talking about is hacking the original gauges out and putting these custom gauges in their place just because it looks super tacky most of the time. And I know, but Jay, I wanted to go 12 volt and my gauges are 6 volt and it wouldn't work. They make a 12 volt to 6 volt step down to make all of your gauges work and still have a 12 volt battery system. Just saying. So what did you guys think of this list? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of blowback in the comments section, but I'm totally ready for it. I just like the cars stock. They just have so much more character when you see them how they were originally intended to be. Bonus, I almost forgot this one. Electronic fuel injection. Save your money. Do not buy this thing unless you're a mechanic and you totally understand it. Because what happens is the battery, say the battery goes dead because the clock is running and you have your car or truck parked for winter storage. Your vehicle has to relearn how to operate, and that takes a little bit of time. The advertisers of this unit will act like you're receiving a gift from God himself, but it is really just a nightmare. It is a colossal headache. Like I said, unless you're a mechanic and you understand it, it is the biggest waste of money going right now. Just buy a big carburetor. There's nothing wrong with carburetors. All right, now it's time for Name That Tune. First person to give me the correct name of the band as well as song title. First one to do both correctly will have their comment pinned to the top of the comment section. Thank you all so much for coming out and watching this. If you'd like to get in touch with me, shoot me a comment in the comment section below. I look forward to hearing your feedback on this episode. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? The other way is we have a Facebook group that correlates with this channel, which the link will be in the description if you would like to check that out. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for our 1961 Pontiac Ventura review. And until that time, toodaloo! When you drink enough of my beer, there's a tiny rule.